Hi, it's Hal from Light, and welcome to another video recap of Monday Night Light, our free live weekly web seminar held every Monday from 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. Last Monday we talked about the graduated filter, one of two local adjustments available to us in Lightroom 2 and also Adobe Camera Raw or ACR 5.5. The graduated filter allows us to make an adjustment to one portion of our image and then in a linear manner fade that adjustment from 100% effectiveness down to 0. Much like a graduated neutral density filter that we would use on the front of our optics when out shooting. To launch the graduated filter in Lightroom, and we'll look at the Lightroom interface first, all you need to do is click onto this small icon right below the center of the histogram, or you could also hit the M key to give you the graduated filter. When you launch the filter, you'll notice that you have a graduated filter dialog box, and it has a lot of different options. Now for those that are watching and yours doesn't necessarily look like this, your dialog that is, it might be because the default looks like this. This interface is what Adobe has chosen as the default, but we at Light recommend switching everything over to sliders by toggling this small switch. Once you have the graduated filter, the first thing you want to do is make sure you have a new mask and then program that slider by selecting something from the drop down menu. In this case I'm going to use brightness. Now I'm going through this workflow portion fairly quickly because I just want to show you what the filter does as well as talk about the symbology, and then we'll go back and build a very simple workflow that you can follow every single time. With my filter selected, a new mask, programmed for brightness, I'm going to drag this cursor over into the display and I'm going to place this filter in the wrong spot. I'm going to let it be just here in the middle of the sky, and to do that all I did was click down my mouse, and that is a left click for those with a 2-button mouse or just a single click for the others. Once I release the filter, notice that I have an effect up above this topmost line, and that effect is whatever I programmed over to the right. I also have another line at the very bottom, and below that I have none of the effect. Between those outer lines I have a gradual transition from 100% down to 0. So let's look at the symbology we have here. The very top line, at least in this instance, is what I call the 100% line. And I make that distinction in this instance because the 100% line here is on top because I clicked the mouse and then drug the mouse down to pull the filter from top to bottom. In our next example, it's going to go from bottom to top. But this is the 100% line. Anywhere above this line or outside of this line, we have 100% of our programmed effect. Opposite the 100% line, we have the 0% line. That 0% line delineates the last place there is any effect from our program, and then below it there's absolutely nothing. In the middle of these two lines we have the center line. I call it the 50% line. It denotes where we have 50% of the effect. And just as you might expect, from 100 to 0, passing through 50, we go from a lot of effect down to absolutely nothing. Now in the middle of this construct we have a small control point or control pin. This pin is always going to be a silver circle, and if the control pin is active, you're going to see a black circle in the middle of that. If we take our cursor and place it over the control pin, notice you get a hand, and we can move the entire construct up or down to help us with fine-tuning the position after we have initially placed the filter. If we take our cursor and move it over the 100% line, we can drag the positioning of the 100% line and expand out the area over which we have the gradient. The same thing goes for the 0% line. By placing our cursor here, we can rotate it down or pull it down. By taking our cursor and placing it any place off to the side, left or right of the control pin, notice that we get an arc and dual-headed arrow, which if we click and hold the mouse allows us to rotate our graduated filter in any direction that we would like. So now that you're familiar with the symbology, let's take a look at building a workflow to use the graduated filter. For this one here, we're going to get rid of it. The way to get rid of a graduated filter is with the control pin active, hit the delete key, and it goes away. So I'm going to close the interface and talk to you in my workflow steps for using the graduated filter. The first workflow step always is to look at your image and recognize that something needs to be done. In this case, we want to make the sky a little bit darker. Second workflow step, activate the graduated filter. Once you've done so, next workflow step, ensure that mask says new. And then we want to program as our next workflow step. I always program by clicking the effect drop-down and choosing one of my options. Now when you choose one of these options, it will set that specific item, in this case brightness, to the last position that you had left the slider, and everything else is zeroed out. Now I like to take my programmed slider and move it all the way one direction or the other. I overdo it so I can have a little bit easier time placing my filter. I'll go back and fine-tune later. With the effect programmed and overdone, then bring your cursor into the image. Take a look at what you want to affect. In this case, I want to affect the sky and have a transition somewhere around this horizon. So I will click into the sky and pull down, bringing that effect across my image. What you'll notice as you're dragging out your graduated filters is that they're a little bit squirrely in terms of rotation. You can lock that down by holding the Shift key, and then all we get is a pure vertical or horizontal movement. Once you have your filter positioned appropriately, then what I'd like you to do is release your mouse and then release the Shift key, and it's positioned appropriately. Our next workflow step is to fine-tune. Brightness of -200 is too much of an adjustment. So go back and dial it back to whatever you think is a little more appropriate. In this case, maybe around -60. To show yourself a before and after, just click the small on and off button and you can see what you've done. Notice as my cursor comes over to the right panel, the symbology disappears. If for whatever reason you would like that to hide the symbology without moving your cursor, you can always hit the H key and the symbology will be hidden. Now that is a sticky setting, so if you hide it and then you run out of graduated filter and wonder where are those darn lines, they're probably hidden. You can hit the H key and bring them right back. Once we have our graduated filter mask built, we could go in and say, although I wanted -64 in brightness, I could potentially bump up the saturation as well. We could make any adjustment up into these graduated filter masks because they are there until we choose to lose them by delete key, and really a fairly powerful adjustment at this point. If I hit close, then that graduated filter is applied to the image. It is in my developed settings file here in Lightroom, and it's going to be available to me any point in the future. So if I want to edit that again, all I need to do is click onto the graduated filter, and notice that as I bring my cursor into the image, I have a control pin right in the middle. To make adjustments, make the control pin active by clicking, and then we can move the sliders to set things up how we choose. You can use multiple graduated filters. To do that, maybe we'll click New. Program the effect. In this case, I'm going to leave it at brightness, but this time I want to move the brightness up just a little bit, and once again I'm going to overdo it because what I'm looking to do here is maybe brighten up the foreground just a little bit. Click into the image. I'm holding down the Shift key now. Release the mouse, then the Shift key. Now we fine-tune. So I'll bring the brightness slider back down to something just a little bit brighter than what it was to try and make this image a little bit balanced. See a before and after? I click on and off. Kind of like where I'm going. For this demo, I want to run out one more graduated filter. So I hit New, Program, and I'm going to use Color. Because California is the golden state and I'm not seeing much gold in these hills, so we're going to put it there. When you click Color, everything is zeroed except for your color swatch, which is now active. Clicking on the color swatch allows you to choose any hue and saturation combo by just clicking into the color swatch, and if you click someplace, you can also adjust the saturation by moving the small saturation slider. For our example here, I'm going to click into one of the defaults. It's a nice bright gold, and with my graduated filter programmed, I'm going to run out this gold filter here in the from the lower right corner of the image. When I release the mouse and it's positioned, we know it's time to go back and fine-tune as our final workflow step, so I'll click back into the color swatch and decrease the saturation until it's not immediately apparent that I've made an adjustment here. Remember, soft and subtle is typically how you want to go. Taking a look at an overall before and after, we see that we can make some very radical changes with limited input here using the simple intuitive interface of the graduated filter. Now I'm going to hit close here, and then to see the total before and after, I will come down to my before and after view in the toolbar, and seeing that yes, in the after view, it's not a perfect image at this point, but in my mind, it's a heck of a lot better than where we started using this simple graduated filter interface. I'll do a companion tutorial to this showing Adobe Camera Raw 5.5 where the symbology is slightly different, but the functionality is almost exactly the same. Hope to see you online this next Monday night where we talk about the adjustment brush, another local adjustment. Thanks a lot. Have a great day.